What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and today we are bringing you a Tearlaments deck profile updated because there is a very special change. Today is the release of Maze of Memories, which means that in 2 days' time on the 10th, Ancient Fairy Dragon will be unbanned with its errata, and that is a huge boost of consistency for this deck. So let's go ahead and show you guys the build. Alright, so we gotta kick things off with the tier names, and due to the latest ban list, we have all of the good ones at 1. So we are playing 1 copy of Merly, Havnis, and Sheeran each. This is just standard. You have to play them because they are your fusion cards. Then we are on 2 copies of Rhinoheart. I know a lot of people want to play this at 3 for consistency, but this is a 44 card deck, so we did need to make some concessions. I think that 2 is the proper number for this particular build, and you'll see why a little bit later on. And then we have 3 copies of our Tearlaments Kashtira. Now, this is not only a tier name, but it is also a Kashtira name, which is very, very important for this particular strategy, and I'll explain why when we get to the cards, but that is also why we are playing 3 copies of Fenrir. This is really important because you are able to use it to search for your copy of Tearlaments Kashtira, and that is really crucial to the combo because you're actually going to want to overlay both of them, and you'll see why. We are playing 1 copy of Keldo, 1 copy of Agido, and 1 copy of Kelbeck. We are not playing Madura. Madura is just kind of a brick. There are a lot of cards we have to play for this strategy to work now, so we had to make a little bit of a concession there. And Madura doesn't really do anything if you draw it or mill it, but you can do something with Keldo if you draw it or mill it. You can do something with the Agido and the Kelbeck if you draw it or mill it. So I just think that this is the correct ratio of the Ishizu cards. Again, they are unfortunately at 1 due to the ban list. But it is what it is. In order to supplement these guys, we are playing the 1 copy of Diviner. The reason we're not playing more copies of this is because there's actually a better / more preferred normal summon that we'll get to in a moment. But this is what allows you to kind of send these from the deck to make sure that you're able to get them off. We do have 3 copies of King of the Swamp. This is mandatory for the strategy. Since we lost Kit Kalos, we have no other way of making Roll Kalos, but not just that, this is what allows us to get into some of the other powerhouse fusions that we are playing. And then this is the normal summon that we would rather have, and that is going to be a copy of Armageddon Knight. The reason we would rather have this is because it does something really special for this particular deck, and that is sends a copy of Destrudo to the graveyard. Destrudo is very crucial for the strategy because we are going to be utilizing Ancient Fairy Dragon, and Ancient Fairy Dragon is a level 7 synchro, which Destrudo will always be able to make. You just summon back the Destrudo either from your grave or from your hand by paying half of your life. It lowers its level by whatever the targeted monster was, and that will always equal a level 7 synchro. So Armageddon Knight is really, really important. Unfortunately, it's only at 1. We are not playing Dark Grepher. There are some builds that play Dark Grepher on top of the Armageddon Knight as well, because it can also send the Destrudo, but in order to do that, you have to discard a Dark monster, and we're really not playing a lot of Dark monsters that we want to discard, so I just didn't see a use for the Dark Grepher. But yeah, so there's that. And then the final monster is 1 copy of Shaddoll Beast. This is just to supplement the Winda. Making a Winda on top of your end board is very, very strong, so that's going to do it for the monsters. Onto the spells. We do have 2 copies of Tearlaments Scream. This is just kind of standard for the deck. You want it to be able to mill when you summon, as well as if you mill it, you can add 1 of your traps. We have 2 copies of Pressured Planet Wraithsoth. Now, this is also really important for the combo as well, because you want to be able to search for your copy of Fenrir. Fenrir is then going to search your Tearlaments Kashtira, and that's what really gets the ball rolling. And because of the Ancient Fairy Dragon as well, we're also playing the 3 tier spells. Since we have the tier spell with the Kashtira field spell, we are able to destroy the Kashtira field spell to search the Tearlament field spell with the Ancient Fairy Dragon, and that is part of the combo, which I am going to show you guys a test hand at the end of the video. Unfortunately, there isn't really a set in stone combo that you have, so showing test hands is really important because it really does depend on what you mill, so that's going to be important. Make sure you stay till the end to see that. Then we have 1 copy of Foolish Burial because we want to be able to send names as well as possibly Destrudo. 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army. Not only is the Rhinoheart a warrior, but so is the Armageddon Knight, so this is kind of multifaceted there, being able to get you into either of those 2, whichever one you might need. And then we have our 1 copy of Polymerization. This is for the King of the Swamp, as well as it's also just really strong to actually hard fuse using Tearlament names, because you can Polymerization away a tier name, and then you get to fuse, and then because the tier was sent by a card effect, you get to fuse again, so it kind of turns into 2 fusions. Really, really strong card. And then 1 copy of Terraforming. We are playing 5 total field spells, so why wouldn't we play Terraforming? We have 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. This is really good to be able to send the Tearlament Trap Salik, because that is essentially just another form of searching, and it's really, really strong when you use it with the Tearlament's Kashtira as well, because you can send the Salik to search the Tearlament's Kashtira, and then Tearlament's Kashtira is live because you have a Salik engrave. We are playing 3 copies of Book of Eclipse. I feel like this deck needs some going second cards, as well as something to kind of keep your opponent at bay if you go first and don't necessarily see your combo. Unfortunately, this deck obviously lost a lot of consistency, so you have to play kind of backup plans in case you're not able to get exactly where you need to go, and that is essentially what Eclipse is. Speaking of backup plans, we have a copy of Meta Noise. This is really good because it's able to put a monster face down, which against the Kashtira matchup is very, very strong. And then 2 copies of Tearlament Sully. You could potentially bump this to 3, but again, we are at 44 cards in the main, so I just didn't really see the need to do so. And finishing things off, we have our copies of Infinite Impermanence. Again, this is one of those going second / going first backup plans. It's just some way to interact with your opponent if you're not able to get exactly where you want to go. So that is the main deck. Let's show you guys the extra. Now, moving on to the extra, I think Logan JYA said it the best in his version. We are not going to respect Kashtira in the aspect of we're not playing multiple copies of important cards, because honestly, whatever they rip, you just kind of pivot to your next option. There's no right call for them to really rip out of your extra deck, so it doesn't really matter. But that being said, we are playing 1 copy of Royal Kalos and 1 copy of Kaleido Heart. I don't think you need more than 1 of either of these. They're recurable, they're like, it's just, you don't really need it. Then we have our 1 copy of the Grapha Fusion. This is typically going to be your first fusion summon because it's an Omni Negate, so it protects your other plays as well. And it's just really strong because it also gets you your discard effects. So there's that. We are playing 1 copy of Winda because of the Shaddoll Beast. 1 copy of Predaplant Dragos Depelia, just because we are playing a fusion deck, so this is really good to kind of supplement your end board. We do have our 1 copy of Guardian Chimera. This is ridiculously strong, especially if you're making it off of Polymerization. That is pretty much the only way you want to make it, because it doesn't get its effect unless it's made off of a spell card. But you technically can make it with the others if you just need like a big beater or something. And then the final fusion is going to be a Mudragon of the Swamp. This is mostly for when you side deck in a card like Super Poly, but even just being itself, it is a rank or level 4, which lets you get into rank 4 plays. It does protect things on your board from being targeted, so it's really not the best card, but it does have its utility. Now, we are playing a copy of Ancient Fairy Dragon because come March 10th in 2 days, because this gets its errata in the Maze of Memory set that comes out today, it is a very, very strong card. You can use it to blow up all field spells on the field, and then gain 1,000 life points and search a field spell of a different name. We're playing 2 different named field spells, so it pretty much works itself out. And then we are actually playing 1 more level 7 Synchro, just because I like it as a backup plan, and that is a Black Rose Dragon. Being able to just nuke the board is very, very strong, and it's really cool in this deck specifically, because if you have an established board when you attempt to go into the Black Rose, if you've got like Tearlament monsters like Royal Kalos or Kaleido Heart, or even if you just have like a Shiren or something, you're going to be able to activate all of those effects because they were sent to the grave by a card effect. So you kind of get to float, and I think that the utility of that is really cool. We are playing a few XYZs. We have a Time Thief Redoer. This is mostly just so that if we are forced to summon our Shiren, we have a way of putting it into the graveyard by card effect. We are playing 1 copy of Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosack. This is for the combo, so you guys will see that in the test hand that we do. And then we are playing 1 copy of Arise Heart, since we do have 6 main decked Kashtira monsters, being the Fenrir and the Tearlaments. If we're going second and our opponent activates their effect of Shangri-Ira in the standby, that means that we're able to summon Arise Heart on top of any 1 Kashtira monster, which is really cool because then that is the easiest way for us to go into a copy of Zeus. We'll just swing with the Arise Heart, we'll slap the Zeus on top, and Zeus versus Kashtira is very, very strong. And then the last 2 cards that we are playing are links. We have Cherubini. This is part of the combo. You're going to make it off of the Dracosack tokens and then send something like King of the Swamp, and then Sprite Sprind as well, because this is what's going to allow us to send our Merly in tandem, because you'll see it in the combo. Just trust me, this is pretty much what we want to do here. So that's the extra deck, 15 cards. Let's show you guys that test hand. And now we're going to go ahead and show you guys a test hand, because there's no set in stone combo. It's very dependent on what you're able to mill. So let's show you guys how far far we are able to take this. We're going to go ahead and open up our hand. It's going to be a Foolish Burial, a King of the Swamp, a Kashtira Fenrir, a Foolish Burial Goods, and a right away now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and activate our copy of Fenrir. This is going to special summon itself, and then we can add a Tearlaments monster from our deck to our hand. We're going to go ahead and here we're actually going to activate or add another copy of Fenrir. The reason we're adding another copy of Fenrir is because we don't need the Tearlaments Kashtira because we have access to it with the Foolish Burial Goods. So we can activate the Foolish Burial Goods, and this is going to allow us to send our copy of Sullik, and then once Sullik hits the grave, Sullik will activate, which lets us add the copy of Tearlaments Kashtira. So here what we are going to do is we're going to summon out the copy of Tearlaments Kashtira. This is going to banish out our Sullik, and then we can activate the Tearlaments Kashtira to go ahead and mill 3. We're going to go ahead, we're hitting the Destrudo, a Pressured Planet Wraithsoth, and a Meta Noise. Unfortunately, none of those are very relevant right now. The Destrudo could potentially come up, but we don't really have a play with the Ancient Fairy Dragon, so we might as well just save it. It becomes a potential Black Rose on our follow-up. But here what we can do is we can go ahead and overlay both of these into a copy of Mecha Phantom Beast Dragossack. We can activate the Dragossack effect, which is going to let us summon out 2 tokens, and then because the tokens are level 3, we're able to turn them into a copy of Cherubini. Now, Cherubini on summon is, or not on summon, but once per turn, you can go ahead and send a level 3 as cost. So we're going to send another copy of King of the Swamp, and now that opens up 2 potential fusions for us as well. And the cool thing about Cherubini is since it is a Link 2, we can then take it with our Dragossack, and this is going to let us summon out our copy of Sprite Sprint. Sprite Sprint on summon is going to send our copy of Merly to the graveyard, and then Merly is going to be able to fuse with one of those King of the Swamps. Now here what we want to do is we're going to use the Merly alongside with one of the King of the Swamps and go into the Grapha Fusion. The reason we're going to do the Grapha Fusion is because it's an Omni Negate, so it will protect our second fusion play as well as just giving us a very good option to prevent our opponent from stopping us. Now we can go ahead and activate the copy of Primeval Planet, and that is going to grab us a copy of Rhinoheart. Now, Rhinoheart here is actually, let's take that back. Let's go ahead and add a copy of Shiren instead, because we have the Foolish Burial, so we're not necessarily worried, and we're just going to try and dig a little bit further here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and activate our Foolish Burial, and this is going to give us the Havness, and the Havness can fuse with the other King of the Swamp that we still have in grave, and that's going to allow us to go into our copy of Rolkalos. So we're going to go ahead and here we'll use the Tearlaments Havness and our King of the Swamp. And this is going to go ahead and go into the Rolkalos. And now we have Rolkalos on the field. If we want, what we can do is we can go ahead and use the Shiren for more potential mills. So let's go ahead, we'll activate the Shiren, send our Fenrir, and mill 3 more. Hopefully we hit something like a King of the Swamp here. We'll hit a Sullik, a Foolish Burial Goods, and a Pressured Planet Wraithsoth. Unfortunately, not all that great, but we do get the Sullik effect, and this is going to allow us to go ahead and grab our Rhinoheart. And we haven't actually normal summoned yet, so we can go ahead and normal out our Rhinoheart. We're not going to use this effect because there's nothing worth sending right now, but that's going to allow us to overlay with the copy of Shiren and make a copy of Time Thief Redoer, which means we can activate the Shiren on our opponent's turn by detaching it, and that's going to be the end board. So we have a Sprite Sprint, which is live because we have an Xyz with material. We have a Rolkalos and a Grapha Fusion, which is a Summon Negate and an Omni Negate. We have the Time Thief Redoer, which is going to let us fuse with the Shiren, which will potentially get rid of either the Rolkalos or the Grapha Fusion for something like a Dragos Depelia, and that is a ton of interruptions, not to mention when we do that we get a pop off the Primeval Planet, and although that didn't showcase the Ancient Fairy, it shows you how strong this deck can still be. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, you know the deal. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with friends, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.